Okay, so looking at the two graphs that we've got, so emphysema affects lung function, so we're comparing a person with emphysema to a person without emphysema. Okay, so the first question is describe the differences between the two curves. So emphysema throughout has a lower tidal volume, so the distance, that difference between the height of the top and the bottom, the tidal volume is the volume of air breathed out per breath. So the difference between the peaks and the troughs throughout is smaller than the difference between the peaks and the troughs in someone without emphysema. So it always has a lower tidal volume in emphysema. Also, linking to the tidal volume gets smaller over time or after starting exercise. You can see that the difference between the peaks and the troughs are getting closer together with someone with emphysema, whereas after carrying exercise, somebody without emphysema, the difference between the peaks and the troughs of the tidal volume is in fact getting larger after time starting exercise. And the last difference we need to look at is the gaps between the peaks, which is the breathing rate. Okay, so that here the gaps between the peaks are fairly far apart, but by the time over here the gaps between the peaks are a lot closer together. So the breathing rate is increasing in someone with emphysema, whereas it's hard to tell, but it's definitely not increasing the breathing rate over time for somebody without emphysema. Then an application question: why is somebody who's got a lower tidal volume, why can they not carry out prolonged exercise? So if you've got lower tidal volume, you can have less ventilation, meaning you're going to get less oxygen into your bloodstream per minute. So if you've got lower tidal volume, you're going to be drawing in less oxygen, so the oxygen concentration the concentration gradient of oxygen is not maintained by breathing in enough oxygen-rich air. So there's going to be less of a concentration gradient between inside the alveoli and the blood. So less oxygen is going to be able to diffuse into the blood. If you've got less oxygen diffused into the blood, there's going to be less aerobic's a key word, less aerobic respiration can occur. So then you're going to get less ATP produced, and so there's not enough ATP provided for muscle contraction. And the words less and not enough ATP are important. So looking at the next resource, does husband smoking affect or increase the risk of wives dying? So they used 540 people, so that's something you can pick up from the information at the top. So straight away that's telling us it's a representative sample. And then looking at the data, we can see that, so here is our standard that we can compare to, so the non-smokers, given a relative value of 1. And we can see that lung cancer we've got an increase, emphysema we've got an increase, cervical cancer we've got an increase, stomach cancer and heart disease, slight increase, slight decrease, slight decrease, slight increase. But I've done a sort of a wiggly line because I'm not really sure you can tell anything from that. So let's look at the evaluation statement then. The question is, a wife is more likely to die from a particular disease if her husband smokes. There's quite a few for and against points, so let's see what agrees with that point. So there are 3 diseases in here that seem to agree with that statement. So for lung cancer, emphysema, and cervical cancer, you could say that there's a greater risk of dying from lung cancer. You could even say, for both lung cancer and emphysema, that the more the husband smokes, the further increase in risk of dying from lung cancer and emphysema for the wife that there is. So we can see the more the husband smokes, there's an increase there. The more the husband smokes, there's an increase for emphysema as well. You can't say that for cervical cancer though. And we can also say from the text above, it's a large sample size, so it's representative. So that's another agree point that we can have. So let's look at the disagree points. So first of all, there's very little difference of dying from stomach cancer and heart disease. Very little difference. It increases here, it decreases there, this decreases there, but increases there. So little difference, and the differences are very, very small. So this is suggesting other factors, well, in general, other factors could have caused the wives to die, like age. Big important point, there's no statistical test. We do not know if the differences between the smoker and so the non-smoker and the smokers is significant. We do not know if this is a significantly higher than that, or if this is significantly higher than that, or if this is significantly lower than that. We don't know if there's a significant difference, so you want something like a t-test between these values and those values, or between these values and those values. And also, it's only one study, so further studies would be needed. And it's only 5 different types of cause as well.